everything is changing. But the question people are asking is, will America become atheist or Catholic? Will it continue this trend of hyper-secularization until religion is mitigated to the sidelines and the private corners of one's home? Or will Catholicism become more and more relevant in the public square?
Woke culture, hookup culture, main character energy.
It is seeing yourself as the protagonist in your own life story.
New age spirituality. These are just a few trends that have shaped Gen Z over the past few years. So you think, with all these movements standing on the complete opposite end of the spectrum from organized religion, faith would be dead. And honestly, that's what I thought too. But that's actually not the case. In fact, something surprising is happening. While much of our generation is walking away from religion, a quiet group of young people are walking towards it. Not just to Christianity, but specifically to Catholicism.
It depends on who looks at the data as to what sort of answer one will receive.
But the Boston Archdiocese reports a 50% bump in people joining or rejoining the church in the last 4 years. And WBZ's Aaron Parsegian says that trend is driven mostly by younger adults.
The Diocese of Venice, Florida, led by Bishop Frank DeWayne, is expecting a 94% increase in converts.
If you're wondering why there's so many people walking up 6th Avenue, it's because we're all going to Mass. All going to Mass.
St. Joseph's Catholic Church in the West Village has gone viral in recent weeks, with mainstream outlets The Atlantic to the Washington Post highlighting the lower Manhattan's popularity with the local Gen Z population.
Young people are converting to Catholicism en masse, driven by pandemic, internet, and lax alternatives.
But I think that the answer is a little bit more complicated than this, because we can be myopic and look just at the surveys from Pew Research Center. Or we can sort of look at the causes and I think factors behind that. In fact, what I'm going to tell you later in the video is that a man between 1835 and 1840, a visitor to the United States, made a prediction that this exact scenario would play out. Cosmic Skeptic. He's a very famous atheist YouTuber. He looks at the data from Pew Research Center that shows the continued trend of secularization from generation to generation, particularly with my generation, millennials, and Generation Z. I think this trend started long ago, and we'll talk about that. But he sees this data as continuing towards secularization, but I think he makes a couple of basic assumptions that miss something. He seems to associate religion with the religious right in the United States. I think that there are people in both parties that use Christianity for political gain and power. I find this disgusting. He cites the Great Awakening. He cites some of the great religious revivals of Billy Graham.
I don't know how you feel, but I feel proud tonight to be an American.
Of the past that were connected to the moral majority of Jerry Falwell.
In 1949, Billy Graham preached that communism is a religion that is inspired, directed, and motivated by the devil himself, who has declared war against Almighty God. This anti-communist messaging especially propelled capitalist Christian theology to the forefront of right-wing politics in the US, and in turn, a massive Christian revival.
Andrew, the genetically modified skeptic, really focuses in on the economics of the old revivals because, in fact, there were CIA ops in South America that were anti-Catholic because those particular Catholic were influenced by too much leftism or Marxism, and the American government wanted to maintain more free market policies when they were countering the Soviets and the spread of communism around the world. I'm afraid that some internet atheists, like the genetically modified skeptic, are really seeing all these complicated nuances through the lens of the binary between the old moral majority, evangelicalism, capitalism, the box they were put into as a kid, and their newfound atheism. In reality, the story is much more interesting than that. What we see historically is a long decline, generation by generation, into secularism and atheism. I maintain that people don't study the science and the philosophy in detail and conclude that atheism is the correct view of the world until some other reason moves them. Rather, I think society in the West has been on the decline to secularism more and more for centuries, and we're along for the ride. This is the reaction against consumerism, corporatism, nihilism, meaninglessness, the extreme ideologies on either side. But what he's missing, I think, is that the religious revival people talk about is not necessarily like the ones of the past. Now, to be fair to him, he was a Christian like so many people. He deconstructed and became, I think, an atheist from a fairly conservative evangelical fundamentalist background. Cosmic Skeptic says it's really the right wing who's claiming this, but it's really not the right wing religious news anymore, is it? It's CBS.
In the pews, another quieter shift is taking place inside the Catholic Church. Across the country, more Americans are choosing to join it. We've learned that in your archdiocese, you're seeing the largest number of converts in recent history. We've heard similar reports from around the country about packed services and increased regular attendance by millennials and Gen Z. How do you explain this surge in interest?
The New York Times, it's the Catholic Church itself. There are record baptisms in France. France is essentially an atheist country at this point. It is the first daughter of the church historically. The Franks and the peoples who lived there converted, and I won't bore you with the history lesson, but it became the France that we know over time through Christianization. But then with the post-Reformation era, it secularized in the Enlightenment, saw people, mobs of people, taking over cathedrals, murdering people, and having weird cultic ceremonies, calling the cathedrals temples of reason. If you're wondering, yes, that is Mr. Bean behind me. It's crocheted and my daughter made it, and it's awesome. The French and the English, if you look at a map of England, King Henry VIII and the French basically confiscated the property that was owned by the churches and ran nuns and monks off the property. Religious art was desecrated by mobs of even religious people going through medieval and ancient churches, ripping their religious art out because it was now seen as idolatrous. I cannot express to you how deeply these things influenced the modern world. The culture of generations was tossed aside and pulled down. Flash forward to the American period. I have the very unpopular opinion that both Christian and secular ideas were deeply ingrained into the DNA of the United States from its inception. Because the founding fathers some of them were devout Protestant Christians, some were devout Catholics, a few, but many were deists or Unitarians or had heretical Christian ideas. Because the modern world is characterized by a rejection of past authority, including religious authority. And I love my country. I served in the Marine Corps. I would do it again. If someone invaded this country, I would fight to the death for the people in this country that I love. But I have to say that I think also America is a land that birthed 1,000 cults. Essentially, someone could start a church in their basement. The United States is the only continent, the only country that could have birthed the Mormon church or the Jehovah's Witnesses as they are at that time in history. Many people in the suffragette and early American liberation period were into Hermeticism. They were into strange occult practices, seances. Flash forward to World War II. I'd actually think the greatest generation was fairly secular. I lived long enough to get to meet people from that generation. My grandfather was a World War II Army veteran. He died with shrapnel in his body from the Japanese. And he was a hero of mine. But I gotta say, in his younger years, he didn't really live a devout Christian life. It was when he was older that he began to take this very seriously, became a Southern Baptist deacon, and really wanted to pass this along to his son and, to me, his grandson. Because in his youth, like so many of his generation, they weren't really devout Christians, but they had affiliation with Christianity. And so if you surveyed them, even in his younger years, he would have affiliated with Christianity on a survey, though he hardly went to church, hardly prayed. I'm willing to bet if you look at videos, footage from Ireland, Dublin, let's say, in the 70s, 80s, with people being interviewed about what they believe, a lot of them are going to say Catholic. But how many of those people were actually living it, or practicing Lent, or going to Mass regularly? Not as many.
Well, I think I'll give the boys up this year for Lent.
Will you find that difficult?
Oh, not too hard.
I'm giving up the drink as well.
You're giving up an awful lot.
Over time, the affiliation with Christianity remained, but became less and less. By the time you come to the baby boomer generation, one of the problems I want to bring up with this is that anytime we broad brushstroke an entire group or generation, you're going to miss a lot of diversity and nuance. But in general, baby boomers, I think, were actually quite liberal. In the seminaries, fundamentalism in America had been a reaction against modernism permeating through the universities, the seminaries. But that failed because they removed themselves from the cultural conversation, fundamentalists did, and became, I think, just isolationists and sadly a bit anti-intellectual. This really affected my generation. The evangelical movement was realizing the fundamentalists kind of failed and that they had to re-engage with culture. But the culture they were engaging with was changing rapidly between the 1940s and the 1960s. Views of sexuality were changing. Birth control was seen as taboo by all Christians, any mainstream Christian Protestant or Catholic, prior to the Lambeth Conference with the Anglicans in the 1920s and 30s. Secular culture was pressuring the religious institutions to become more, well, secular. Tying that together with the rise and spread of Marxism around the world, the religious right was sort of embattled with Marxism abroad, and really Marxism or postmodernist, I would say the term people use is cultural Marxism, spreading through the universities here. That got into, that modernism and postmodernism got into even Catholic seminaries, I'm sorry to say. And something called liberation theology, with its merits and its deep flaws, was spreading, and young men becoming priests and ministers in the 60s were educated in, well, liberation theology. Why are you saying that? Because it matters and it affects the conversation now. So more and more mainstream Protestant denominations became more and more modernist and postmodernist, and rejected more and more of the bulk of the historic Christian faith. These are mainstream Protestants like the Episcopalians. The church of the founding fathers that was the Anglican Church is dying out. Fundamentalism began shrinking a bit, but also in sections like the Independent Baptist movement for a while was growing. It was trying to react against modernism in the Southern Baptist Convention, the country's largest Protestant denomination. But the battles that they chose to fight were, well, against the age of the earth, the scientific consensus on that. And I don't think they were very effective in discussing broader cultural issues. Gen X, by the way, is just a pretty cool generation. I just typically get along with those folks just fine. And they were more, I don't want to say screw you, but they were more, it's kind of live and let die generation. But they were more secular than even the boomers. All right, enter my group, the millennials. Many of us grew up in church. And I don't want to insult the people with whom I went to church or the ministers. I have no desire to do that. I will remember to my dying day the good things about them, because there are good things about many of them, some more than others. But what people my age felt was something typical of the modern world. Roger Scruton, the late British philosopher Sir Roger Scruton, said in his book, An Intelligent Person's Guide to Modern Culture, said the modern world doesn't have great heroes like the past. We have actors. And we have salesmen and cynics. So in my experience, these things were very related, because the friendliness in the United States became more and more as salesmanship. This was true in my experience largely of preachers and church services, where they were trying to be so friendly to people my age because they knew the older crowds were dying out and they wanted to keep their churches going. And so they were being friendly, but they were being friendly to sell me something, it felt like. After a while, I got really attuned to sensing that, and I just really lost all care for BS, frankly. So what people my age saw, I think, was, maybe you can relate to this, a lot of people trying to become less fundamentalist and creating a big emotional hoopla about giant concerts. And it was hip and cool at first for younger people. I never got into that myself, but many people who didn't go to church were now going back to church because it was cool and it was fun and it was emotionally driven. But at the end of the day, a lot of that was salesmanship. It was performative. I've seen this in fundamentalist and conservative evangelical churches too. They drive a really hard line about the age of the earth, about some fundamentalist churches about arbitrary things like dress standards. Put on top of that many of my friends, men and women, but especially women, really did go through abusive situations in some churches. And that's really scarred the way they think about American Christianity. The judgmentalism in some crowds and the performative base where the preacher is performative and he becomes some sort of an idol, or the music is just performative and it doesn't seem genuine. And so guess what? People my age, just like Gen X, were quite cynical of all of it. I'm not a fan of revivalism from Charles Finney. These revivals would sweep through New York City in the 1800s, early 1900s, and many people would profess religious faith and make a conversion experience and then get emotionally burnt out because it was emotionally driven, and they wouldn't last. And then they become numb to it. I think something similar happened to my generation. 9/11 happened, and the new atheist took up the gauntlet of saying all religion was to blame. Religion is violence. Religion poisons everything. A guy I used to like quite a bit, kind of still do, Christopher Hitchens. Witty, funny, cool guy, extremely arrogant, and his arguments were terrible. He said religion poisons everything, and if we can just get rid of religion, then so much of the violence and toxicity and ignorance will pass. We have the benefit of hindsight now, and that's not what's happened. As Christianity has declined rapidly in the United States, we have not become kinder, we have not become more reasonable. In fact, scientific institutions are trusted less. Some because they sell out. We found out they're able to be bought off or pressured politically. But also, people think the earth might be flat. So people have not become more reasonable, including atheists. But it's not just this dynamic between atheists and Christians, especially the old mainline Protestant groups or evangelicals and fundamentalists. What's actually happening is those some people who become atheists really feel emotional release when they leave that struggle of what will my parents think if they know I'm doubting, or might want to stop going to church. Or maybe they're struggling with guilt or all the rules that they don't know why they should keep. And they finally leave religion and they feel very happy because of this release of emotional tension. That's a real thing, but what's also a very real thing is depression and isolation, and essentially, I would say thinly veiled nihilism is rapidly spreading. I think what's happening is societal collapse. It's the collapse of the traditional narratives, the liberal narratives, and I mean that in the technical sense. The institutions of the Western countries, the narratives and mythologies of the creation of the United States are all being rejected. The post-World War II order is being rejected by both sides. I have looked people in the face as they explained to me how Stalin was demonized or how Hitler was demonized. And the post-World War II world order and consensus is being rejected by people who live in the United States. And they're looking for answers elsewhere, not in evangelicalism, not in atheism. Yeah, there's lots of people in those groups, huge amounts of people. But people more and more, when you survey them, they will say, I'm not religiously affiliated. Well, a none. They're agnostics, they're atheists, they're just people who go about their busy, hard lives, producing, working, and consuming as they're supposed to. That's how it's designed now. And they don't really have time or energy to think about these hard things. Because at this point, Christianity is no longer the default in the United States. In the past, people who barely went to church, barely prayed, maybe they did, but not often, or not deeply, including Catholics, were culturally Christian in some sense. And if you ask them if they were Christian, they would affiliate with Christianity. That's no longer the case. The default now is some sort of secularism. I personally doubt that this is going to last long term. It turns out, if you look at other statistics, people are finding atheism quite depressing, and they're turning for answers to the religions of their ancestors. Many European descended people, I know several of them, are returning to some sort of paganism.
If you've just started getting into the world of nature-based spirituality, then you might have come across so many different terms, from Wicca to pagan, heathen. I could make a whole video about the history of the spread of Christianity and the way that it was done, and a lot of this was done through repurposing old pagan things.
Pagan practice, it's not genuine paganism, but an attempt at pagan practice is on the rise. Because people, it turns out, don't feel happy living in concrete cities that are not meant to walk in, and they're not beautiful, and they just work all the time and consume entertainment products, and they're depressed, and they're looking for connection with nature, with the past, for tradition. There's a large movement among African American women to practice some sort of tribal witchcraft, even voodoo. In the past, where older African American women would be, I know some of them, they're pretty cool people. I don't want to dismiss them either, but the old church ladies with the big hats, some of those folks are just cool. But more and more of the younger crowds, my generation and younger, by the time they're grandmothers, they're not going to be that type of a church lady. Families are breaking down, communities are breaking down. Anything tying us together at all is breaking down outside of maybe the English language. And we all know about McDonald's.
I think it's for the first time in American history, young men are more religious than young women. They're attending services more. They're more likely to identify as religious.
Right.
Can you talk about the Catholicism part of that?
I think it's helpful to maybe broaden out to some bigger trends first. My church is really full, actually.
Right.
A lot of people seem to be converting.
Compared to other faiths, maybe even, let's say, Episcopal or other churches, where they might be like, well, we're not having as many young people as we'd like come in.
Yeah, it seems that there are just more young people or young families who are beginning to attend church or converting to Catholicism. And that's unusual, because usually we see that people who are older tend to be more religious, while the younger, less religious. But you pointed out that, people don't seem to be becoming Episcopalian, say, in the same way. And I think one of the interesting things in this moment that we're seeing is people are joining more traditionalist denominations or churches, including the Catholic Church. Like, they're going for the hard stuff.
In addition to the surge of young people joining the Catholic faith, John Mark Grodi, executive director of the Coming Home Network International and host of EWTN's The Journey Home program, says he's been seeing a mix of reasons why people are joining for the first time, while others are returning home to their Catholic faith.
It has a clear teaching. It persists throughout the years. It's guided by the Holy Spirit. And so even people who were brought up Catholic, oftentimes people who were brought up Catholic and leave, it's hard to bring them back, because they think that they already get it. They already know what Catholicism is. And so again, I think there's a renewed visibility of Catholic identity that is drawing people who were brought up Catholic back home.
Another thing affecting this is the numbers for Christians are actually being bolstered by the large amount of immigrants who are often from South America and are generally Christians, particularly Catholic. Whether or not they live it, they still affiliate with it. And what I've noticed is some of them come here and they have the values similar to the older American generations that I remember. They work hard, they have family values. They often go to church at least occasionally. They pray over meals. But then they put their kids in public school system, thinking it's all going to be fine. And their kids, the people who just got here, who are at least moderately Catholic, their kids secularize very quickly. So even that part, feeding into statistics, is It's very dynamic. It's changing rapidly. Bring that all to now. Well, I think Eastern Orthodoxy, correct me if I'm wrong, is shrinking globally. In the United States, it's doing quite well, particularly with young men. People are flooding into the Eastern Orthodox parishes. This is also true of Catholic parishes. There is a parish in New York City that is full every Sunday, people lining up, of mostly younger millennials and Generation Z people. Now keep in mind, with respect, some of the archbishops and bishops are those people who are now older men, for all the wonderful things about many of these people, who were educated in a time that was a fleeting moment in time. And so you do have some more, I want to say, theologically liberal people in high places in the Catholic Church. But what's happening now is the young men entering the churches are doing this by choice. The young women entering the Catholic Church, I want to say even the Orthodox churches, and I would say some of the very serious-minded Protestant churches are doing this deliberately and by choice, because it's no longer the default. And if you hold anything moderately Christian views, yeah, my leftist friends laugh at me, but you will absolutely be made fun of. You will absolutely be slandered, lied about, said that you're hateful. Ask me how I know. And these people are doing this by choice. And so I think the future of the Catholic Church is actually quite bright, because these young men are taking the faith extremely seriously. And I would say that the bishops of the future, the priests and bishops of the future, by the time I'm an old man, if I live that long, are going to be quite locked in. I would not be surprised if we see a resurgence in young ladies to religious life. Because in the rejection of religious authority, we've seen the aftermath, the outcome of this. And it's not really been good. We don't have to wait and see what happens. We're seeing it now. And a lot of young people are filling back into churches. In most of the parishes I've visited or been a part of in my 3 years as a Catholic, well, you might want to get there a little bit early to make sure you get a seat. And it's not just white heads. It's people of all ages and ethnicities. The Catholic Church is booming in, I think, Asia and Africa. Interestingly enough, this guy is named Alexis de Tocqueville, Democracy in America. He was a French aristocrat who toured the United States to look at our prison systems. But in his mind, he was curious why the American Revolution, though violent, seemed to have stabilized very quickly. And in some sense, America had maintained some type of connection to the past, while the French Revolution certainly did not. And the French Revolution failed. The Russian Revolution was a mess. So he had his careful, thoughtful travels of the United States to sort these things out. In Chapter 6, The Progress of Roman Catholicism in the United States. This is written between 1835 and 1840. I'm going to read you a lengthy passage, but it is fascinating. America is the most democratic country in the world. And it is at the same time, according to the reports worthy of belief, the country in which the Roman Catholic religion makes most progress. At first sight, this is surprising. Now, I think Tocqueville himself he associated with Catholicism, though I don't think he believed it fully. I think he realized that countries need religion. Two things here must be accurately distinguished. Equality makes men want to form their own opinions, but on the other hand, it imbues them with a taste and the idea of unity, simplicity, and impartiality in the power that governs society. Men living in democratic times are therefore more prone to shake off all religious authority. But if they consent to subject themselves to, say, authority of this kind, they choose at least that it should be single and uniform. Religious powers not radiating from a common center are naturally repugnant to their minds, and they almost as readily conceive that there should be no religion as that there should be several. At the present time, more than at any preceding age, Roman Catholics are seen to lapse into infidelity. By that, I think he means heretical ideas, perhaps Protestantism. And Protestants to be converted to Roman Catholicism. If you consider Catholicism within its own organization, it seems to be losing. If you consider it from the outside, it seems to be gaining. This sounds familiar. Nor is this difficult to explain. The men of our days are naturally little disposed to believe. But as soon as they have any religion, they immediately find in themselves a latent instinct that urges them unconsciously towards Catholicism. Many of the doctrines and practices of the Roman Catholic Church astonish them. I can relate to that. But they feel a secret admiration for its discipline, and its great unity attracts them. If Catholicism could at length withdraw itself from the political animosities to which it has given rise, I have hardly any doubt but that the same spirit of the age which appears to be so opposed to it will become so favorable as to admit of its great and sudden advancement. Thus there have been and will ever be men who, after having submitted some portion of their religious belief to the principle of authority, will seek to exempt several other parts of their faith from it, and to keep their minds floating at random between liberty and obedience. But I am inclined to believe that the number of these thinkers will be less and democratic than in other ages, and that our posterity will tend more and more to a division into only two parts, some relinquishing Christianity entirely, and others returning to the Church of Rome. Is America becoming more atheist? Yes. Is America becoming more Christian? Yes. And from my humble convert opinion, I think many Catholics are becoming more Catholic by trying to let the faith permeate our lives more thoroughly. And when we fail, we go to confession, and we go to adoration, and we spread the gospel, and we try to do genuinely good works and grow in the virtues. But whoever you are, I hope you know your life matters. Someone somewhere loves you and misses you when you're gone. So don't check out early. Live your life, live it to the fullest. Know that God loves you, and as always, thanks for watching. God bless.